Welcome to Making Conversations, a podcast from makers Gemma Millen and Robin Galway.
Today we are making conversations with Deborah Toner. We are here with Deborah Toner, myself, Gemma and Robin. We're talking with Deborah today. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. How are you guys?
Good. Yeah. Let's kind of just jump in then. So tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your background. How did you become a maker?
Okay, I studied to become an architect, so I've always been really creative and I'm always been a maker, and I think that covers so many different things. When I was growing up, it was just I had a pottery wheel, I had clay and a weaving loom and everything, and my parents massively encouraged that, and I was just really into using my hands and making things and really into patterns and pieces of fabric and reading through my granny's sewing room and all of that I think had a massive influence on me. Then I think I was quite heavily encouraged to do a degree that you got a job out of, so, and that I understand now that I'm older, that where that encouragement comes from. I was always then really fascinated with the built environment and architecture, and again from a material point of view, the materiality of your surroundings. And we spent so many years as kids traveling around Ireland and down in Lough Erne, and just seeing how different people live in their different surroundings and architecture, so it massively influenced me. But I came from a really, really kind of creative part of that, I think. So I applied to do architecture, and then a very long 7 years later then came out. I actually failed final year. I had some health problems and had to take some time away, and then was really determined to finish, even though they said stop, come back. But I said no, I'm going to finish, and then I failed one module by a couple of points, really, really minor, but I kind of should have taken their advice. But then I think that's part of me too, just really, really determined and a bit stubborn kind of to go along with that. But and that works, that pays off in other respects. So then in my degree show I displayed some maps that I made, but I'll go back as part of my thesis, and you all have to write a thesis in masters. You were offered kind of the opportunity to make something. If you make something you can write less. I mean, for anybody that's creative, that's happy days. The last thing you want to do is be slogging typing at a computer. I thought, right, the bet, this is brilliant, great, this is right up my street. And because I did find elements of studying architecture quite tough, because there is model making and there is that kind of creative side, but there's an awful lot of kind of theory-based learning and things like that, which is quite heavy if it's not kind of who you are. But it becomes who you are whether you like it or not, because it's such a long kind of process, and you end up just really loving it, and it just becomes you. I wrote my thesis about city patterns and factors that affect and change those city patterns, and we all had to, studying in Ulster, you all had to kind of bring your theme back home. So whatever your theme was, you had to tie it back into where you lived or the city that you were in, the city you were studying in. So city patterns for me was something to do with materiality, fabric, but then also the patterns, street patterns, the layout of your city, and then obviously factors and effects and changed over time with the Troubles, the introduction of the West Link. So if you comparatively look at a series of maps, the introduction of the West Link just obliterates so much of our city. Places in North Belfast, for example, where my mum grew up, was a lovely, beautiful series of terrace streets that then half of it just got completely obliterated and made into cul-de-sacs. So kind of studying that. And then you take reference of Chicago, that's built on a grid, and Birmingham that was, completely destroyed and then rebuilt. So you kind of can look at all those different places and different city patterns and how people live, but I always wanted to bring it back to something tactile and something kind of that I could really put a whole load of me into. So that's where I then decided to make a series of maps to represent fractured changing and development of Belfast over time. And I did that, a series of 6 from the very first recorded map, which was 1648, right up until the present day, which at that time was 2009, which feels like a very long time ago now. And I displayed these at my degree show. I was approached by the Ulster Museum and they asked to buy them. Well, first of all, they asked to include them in a kind of a travelling exhibition. And I just thought, yeah, no problem. And I kind of never really thought of my work like that. But as kind of the little hidden artist in me at that point was brilliant, this is amazing. And so they traveled around for about a year, and then they asked could they buy them for their permanent collection. They bought them, and they've been held on permanent collection in the Ulster Folk Museum, and I think to this day they are still the most recent acquisition of linen into the Ulster Folk Museum. So that's quite a nice thing for the non-existent CV. But yeah, so it's a nice thing to be able to tell people, and a nice kind of basis. So from that's kind of where I began, and I thought, well, there might be something in this, turning your architectural drawings into something different, something that appeals to my more creative nature and me wanting to work with my hands. You finish college and you're wiped out, especially after a really, really intense master's. So I didn't want to do anything to do with it. I wanted just a break. And I think I felt like that after part 1 too. And I think it's kind of, I don't think it's only architecture. I think it's maybe just when you come out of like a really institutionalized environment, you are just frazzled. And, you know, I just wanted to go on holiday. I wanted to get a part-time job. I just wanted to just live a little bit. After that, I decided, right, I've got all of these drawings and this massive body of work. What can I do to move that in that direction and see? Like, you've no idea whether it's going to work, and you kind of take a bit of a chance. But I just made some really, really simple embroideries of Belfast buildings, pieced them together, and made my skyline. It hasn't changed since that point. Now, I've refined how I do it, and I feel it looks better and works better, but it hasn't changed since those very early days. And I got a casual pitch at St. George's Market. The day that I went there, I was given a really horrible fish scaly table. I had stolen my mum's wedding present linen tablecloth out of the hot press. It was just like, she'll never know. Cleaned down the table with horrendously bad for the environment baby wipes. I think we got like a sponge and something, so they were all cleaned off, and this really beautiful Irish linen tablecloth down, and not very much product, but I spent the whole day speaking to people about what I did, and I got so much interaction, and I sold everything on my table, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, my husband was with me. He wasn't my husband then, but we left that day on such a high. Like, we had so much fun, and to feel that you can do something like this was just amazing. So I sat at our table in our apartment and just kept making and making and making, and then trying to find out what I could do, where I could join and be a part of, and be a part of the community, like Craft NI and Spacecraft and things like, just little things like that. And it kind of just rolled on from there. But it's a really, really long journey. It feels like to have come to even that point, and then from that point to this point has just been mad.
So can you tell us a bit more about St. George's? Is that how you developed your product ranges?
Okay, so I was doing that for, I think in total about 6.5 years, and I absolutely adored it. It is such a good place to start a business. It requires a huge amount of work. It really does, and it takes up so much of your time, and so many people gave me advice to say it will completely tie you down, and I thought, no, it'll be fine, it's one day a week. You kind of come up to that natural kind of enlightenment yourself, but it takes time. So I would never change the journey that I took, and I think it massively launched me to higher points within my career by being there, because it's a little shop front. It's an amazing opportunity in that respect. You get to see people, locals that are just down for a cuppa or just to get out of the rain or whatever, but then also you are exposed to so many tourists, you're exposed to so many other makers, there's so many other opportunities then to collaborate and work together. But I think being there, and the people that I met just per chance, like interior designers, architects, clients that then became and are still are really good friends, that would have never have happened without that little shop front. And yes, it does take up an awful lot of your time. Even though it's a day a week, you kind of start your Monday thinking, right, what stock do I need to make, what orders do I need to record and work on from the previous day. So it kind of is quite all encompassing, but I wouldn't change it. And I think that it's, as much as 6.5 years sounds an extraordinarily long time, it was fab. And I ended up actually for the last year and a half, I think year and a bit, going down to half time. So I only did 2 Sundays a month, which was brilliant because it was the best of both worlds. And it was just before I found out I was pregnant, but I wanted to do it to try and grow my business in different kind of areas. And then I was pregnant, and I thought, well, of course I'm going to spend my time or my weekends with my family. At that time, when I did decide to cut down, I had so much else going on within the rest of my business that I felt that it was a natural progression to kind of not leave it behind, but kind of press slight pause. And then when Barney came along, and you kind of just have a completely different shift. And my business has shifted so much over the years of different directions, and I kind of try and keep it really tight. But you kind of go different ways slightly. I just realized I don't need to be there anymore. And I think it's really, really important sometimes to just pave the way for other people, because there are so many amazingly talented people in Northern Ireland and in Belfast. We are brilliant. We are absolutely so incredibly talented, and we're not properly kind of shouted about, I think, enough. And I think to pave the way and let other people know that they can go in and they can do that, and that they can make a living if they work hard enough. But I loved every minute, like getting up early, queuing in your car before kind of things became slightly more kind of organized and like concrete, was awful. But you did it, and it was good crack. And the friends that you make, the people that you're exposed to and you meet, is fabulous. Like, it's such a good place, such a good environment, but definitely hard work, but worth it, absolutely worth it. And I was lucky at that point to get in, because you've seen that now the stalls are like hen's teeth. They're really, really difficult to get into. But I think that's something that would be maybe a really cool thing for the council to look at on a rotational basis or something like that. It would be fabulous to let certain bodies of makers or people take over areas at certain times, or take over the market, or, you know, even like the way they do the Twilight Market, do something that's dedicated to a certain body of people once a month or whatever, something like that, because it is such a good experience to expose yourself. And yeah, I think I owe it an awful lot, because it kind of gave me that little push, which was brilliant.
Can we talk a little bit about your making processes and even the materials that you use? You're really conscious about all of your product using an Irish linen, and there's such a tremendous heritage here. Could you talk a little bit about the history of it as well, and why it's important to you to use that?
My interest in that started when I was at college, and I was researching making these maps. I thought, because of where we're based in Belfast with the shipyard, like, we were huge for linen industry amongst other things at one time. I think it was really important for me to go into that kind of deeper meaning, and I thought you could draw your pieces or embroider onto anything, but then it doesn't have quite so much meaning. And I think that the research that I put into the maps and the history that I wanted you to see when you looked at them, I wanted you to see right back into the fact that flax was grown here, the linen was woven here, all of those things. And I think you might not have seen that by looking at it, but you saw that when you read my thesis alongside of what I was displaying. So it's very, very important for me from a sustainability point of view, but also I think it's really important to be really genuine as a maker. I think you and I have talked about this a little bit before, Robin. There needs to be like really solid, honest and genuine bones to what you do, because if you do not have that within your practice, it won't last. I mean, I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I think for me to know where every single piece of what I do and what I make, where it comes from, and the fact that I can genuinely sit and say, this is where it comes from. I know these people. I've watched this grow. I've done X, Y, and Z. And if I don't know where, I find it out. I go and I find it out, and I make those connections. Because then I think for me, when you have that real genuine rooted honesty, you can sell it, or you don't really even need to sell it, because people buy that honesty. And then, you know, obviously it needs to look well and be made well. But I think that before all of that, it has to come from somewhere. And that's why then last year, like a maniac, decided to plant my own flax field.
Yeah.
Because I thought I've seen and been involved in all of these little processes through the people that I work with and my colleagues, who are like just the best people, and they're, you know, like family to me now. But I thought I need to know how from start to finish. That was my kind of plan. But then I was pulling flax 9 months pregnant, which isn't ideal. So I planned to then, depending on what way we're allowed to be with social distancing, I plan to pick up the process kind of from August, September this year. And I have the flax in my studio here, the dried flax, which can be used and processed further at any time. I have some really good friends and some colleagues that will allow me to be involved at the other stages. But I think it's just to be genuinely embedded in that kind of ethos from the start. You have to be, because if you aren't, you'll just get distracted by something else. And maybe that's to your fault too. Maybe you can be sometimes maybe too precious. But I think that for me it works, and it keeps me on a nice narrow path, because I think from a creative point of view, you want to go way off and do all of these lovely things, but sometimes to keep you grounded and driven and running a business that can pay you a wage. And so it's very, very nice that, because you get asked a lot of things, but you get asked, can you embroider this on my blanket, or can you embroider this on my bedclothes, or and you can, of course, anything's possible, but that is not what I do. And I think to keep it also then helps you have a really, really solid USP, and I think that's important too, because then, even though I don't know what to describe myself as I said earlier, Gemma, I do know what I am about, and I do know what I want to do, and the message that I want to get across sometimes doesn't maybe always just roll off the tongue as one phrase, but I think if you keep really, really tight to what you do, it's quite important. And my linen is all grown locally and dyed locally, woven locally, all of that, and I'm really, really precious about that. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to just have a relationship with all of those people, and they are like my family now. And it's tough during this time that you can't just go and see them, but we do keep in touch, and it's fab. Stuff just arrives in the post and it's beautiful, which is lovely. But yeah, it's I do miss visiting the mill and things like that, but it's just so important for me. And even not just the linen, all of the other things, if I can't source them here, I source them within the UK. It's important too for the economy that you're bringing money into our economy, which helps everybody. But yeah, so I think if it's not from Ireland, Northern Ireland, it's from the UK, and I think that's really, really important. And eventually I would like to keep it all from here.
I'm pretty ignorant even on the process of how you transform those tiny little flowers into a cloth. How does that happen?
It's a really good question. That's actually, I'm working on something at the minute. All will be revealed, but I can't tell you right now. Okay, so like maybe next week. But yeah, you plant the seeds. They're like the flax seeds. You can have flaxseed on like your cereal. They're different types. Obviously, you don't eat these ones. But yeah, plant your flax seeds, and it grows as a tiny little bud, and it grows and it grows and it grows. I mean, mine at one point was, I think the tallest mine was about maybe 1.5 meters high, and it grows this tiny little beautiful purpley blue flower, and then it closes up into like a seed pod head. It's like a little ball. They're right here beside me, but I'll make too much noise getting them. These big stalks are beaten down, and they break away, and inside the stalk is a tiny like flax fiber, which is like a really kind of like the color of your hair, like a blonde hair. And they're all then spun together into a yarn that then is woven into linen, and then can be dyed, and the yarn can be dyed first and then it can be woven. That's a really, really non-expert quick description of the process. But yeah, it's basically the fibre comes from the really long stalks. The way you get it out is that you scotch it. So you beat a massive, it's really hard when I can't show you, like a massive kind of handful of them, and you put it through a scotcher, which is a huge blade and a piece of timber that goes round and round, and it kind of beats all of the hard outer crusty shell off. Then you kind of, I can't remember what the name for the brushing of it is, but you get the rest of it all out. But there's so many more processes. So once it's pulled, which is what I did, and it's dried, it's then redded, which softens the kind of the crust around the stalk and the stem. And redding is just in a dam. It can be done in a barrel depending on the amount you have, but they just dig a big hole and they put it all in, and it basically is left to rot. Ret is rot. It all breaks up and it's very smelly and it's like compost, but then when it comes out, it's very, very, very soft. And then it's scotched into all of these fibres, which is like this really, really, it's like a coarse hair, and it's blonde, and then it's matted down and then spun. So it's very lengthy process, but it's actually really, really fascinating to watch and to see all of those phases, because then I think when you look at a final piece that you have, you justify the money that you've spent on it, the effort that you've put into it, and then again you can tell people about that. So it's not just here's this thing that I've made, or here's this thing that I've bought and I'm trying to sell to you. Like, yeah, I kind of get myself quite bedded into that process. But I'm actually working on a piece at the minute that is kind of like the conclusion of what I went through last year growing my own flax at the same time as growing my own human. So I kind of made this piece to celebrate kind of a year of what I decided to start but haven't quite finished yet, and that kind of celebrates it. So I think I might do some sort of piece, like write a blog post, or maybe just do some pieces, shorter pieces online to explain kind of the process, and then the outcome, which is this piece, which is kind of like a celebration of the flax flower. And again, it's a Belfast flax flower because no one grows flax in Belfast and no one has done for a long time. So I decided, I would just do it up the back garden. And I've been told I'm never allowed to do it again. So that was the one time only, unless I can sneaky plant some more another time. But yeah, I'd get in big trouble. I think that explains the kind of long journey.
So do you get much out of it then? I mean, in terms of like the quantity, how much of the flax do you need? Do you get a big return for that strand that's inside it, or?
I planted a very small area, maybe like 2 by 4 meters or 2 by 5, like very, very, very small. And the yarn that you would get off that would probably not even get you half a tea towel, like tiny.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely tiny. So the whole point was, for me, was to just learn the process. And even if I came away with like a tiny kind of, say, post-it notepad size of it didn't matter. I just wanted to know that I had done and experienced that whole kind of journey. So it does take an awful lot. The flowers are just, sounds bad to say, but they're just like you don't use them for anything. They're like not a byproduct, okay. But the flax plant flowers for less than 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
So, which is so beautiful because they're so delicate. They continually flower for a number of weeks. Each one only flowers for less than 24 hours. And it's so, so nice. But that's just part of like the process of the growing and the kind of the development. And then it goes into like a husk, like a little, can I show you?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, wow.
So they're like little husks, really, really hard, and they were the flower, and then they close up into this kind of a husk, and so it's this long.
Oh my gosh, wow, yeah, that's a good bundle there.
You see, now there was a lot more, but when we were kind of trying to dry it out, we were drying it out in the middle of getting our garden done and then having like a brand new baby, so it started to rot itself, so we lost a little bit of it, but some of the husks at the very, very bottom are very thick. So you can see where it would come out. It's hollow, but then inside it's made up of all these little tiny, tiny like strands of hair. They're the tiniest, thinnest pieces. So like it would make very, very little. So it is a really, really laborious task. But it's actually really beautiful because we were so famous for it, and it was used for everything. As with a lot of industry, people farm it out to get it done in the most unethical ways, and not all of the time, but a lot of the time. And it ends up, of course, it's cheaper, but it's so much worse quality. You don't know where it's come from. You don't know who's made it. You don't know if it's a child that has made it. You don't know whether they're getting paid. So a lot of that kind of, I think, influences what I do as well, and why I kind of need to be totally involved, because there is so much out there where you just don't know where certain things are coming from a sustainability point of view as well, and the carbon footprint as well, to know that it is so close to home, and that you can then provide something that you can be so honest about the fact that that it's not taking a massive amount of energy, it's not flying across the world, it's still great quality. And Irish linen, actually, a lot of people think, it creases really badly, or of course it creases, but proper Irish linen that is made here in Ireland, where the flax is grown, doesn't crease as badly because it is inherently damp. When it's made artificially, for example in China, with a flax that has been grown in a really, really dry climate, it's going to crease more because it's not used to the conditions. So Irish linen grown and produced in Ireland in damp conditions will not crease as much as other more artificial processes because of the damp. Went a damp journey, kind of like,
That's a lovely positive spin on our weather. Like a great benefit.
Kind of, but it's, you feel yourself, especially on a day like today, you feel almost like you could grow mold yourself. It is just so dank and damp. But yes, linen grown in this environment here will not crease as badly. And the proof's in the pudding when you buy one of like my pieces, and it's not, because I've never had anyone come back, oh God, please don't come back now. But I've never had anyone come back and say, oh my goodness, it creases so badly. Yes, you might want to give it a nice iron and fluff your pillows or do whatever, but it doesn't crease as badly as like the linen trousers you'll buy
Well, even the mill that you're working with, there's a mill literally just really close to me as well. And I know there's mills dotted all over the place. They're not in use anymore. And excuse my ignorance, but are there many still working, or is it an industry that's still happening at all? Is it something that's being revived?
There's a lot that aren't being used, and I think that they're being killed by the fact that a lot of people are going far to get labour for cheaper as well as the end material. People are really trying really hard. There is a small group, which is actually getting bigger, it's growing, of people that want to bring it back. They want to revive it, they want to make it better. And it's one thing in saying we want to get this back and we want to bring it back to where it was, and there's another thing in actually being part of making that happen. The promotion of it as well is a massive thing. There was a Linen Biennale last year that was actually really good in promoting the kind of just like the fact that we are really, I mean, we should be proud of where we come from, and the fact that Belfast is so famous for the linen industry, and the fact that so much of like the world's best linens were made and produced and sought after, and it was huge, and we became so well known for that. And I think the promotion of that and the talking around that and getting other people involved was definitely a really good step in kind of starting that. The people that I work with work very hard in order to shout about it to the right people and try and beaver away in the background to work as well, because you're doing a whole lot of promoting and shouting, you're not maybe producing as well. So people that I work with produce and send all over the world. That helps as well, and that helps promote. And there's still a massive market for it. Like, people want it and people are prepared to spend maybe the little bit of extra money that it might cost because of the lengthy process and the fact that it's from here. There's definitely a want for the revival and a need for the revival, but I think also, honestly, for me, is there's a definite fear that someday it might not come to fruition, or it might just die altogether. But I will do my best, and the people that I work with certainly will as well, to make sure that we shout about it enough and we work hard enough to keep it as alive as we can. But I think the fact that the people that I work with, I hope I'm allowed to say this, they sell linen to Savile Row. They send all over the world. They weave for Game of Thrones. They bring it on the bus down to the town, cycle out to the shipyard and bring it. Like, they're so unbelievably passionate, sustainable, basically walk the linen to the studios. You know, all of those things are really important to them. You know, supporting small businesses as well is hugely important to them too. They grow flax in the field beside them, and they also get heavily involved with other people who do the same thing that are dotted about the country. So yeah, a definite passion for it to be there, and I think just with the hard work, hopefully we'll continue to get there.
Well, you mentioned about the Linen Biennale. I know you had some beautiful work in there. Could you tell us a bit about that experience and how that came about?
They put like a call out for you to submit kind of ideas for different things, and I got involved in a few different capacities. It was strange because I don't think anyone at the start knew what they wanted it to be, and it was kind of a good thing as well as kind of maybe a slightly confusing thing. It was brilliant to be a part of, and it was brilliant to be a part of lots of those different things because it pushed you out of your comfort zone. I had some pieces in an exhibition that was going on. Then I also there was a shop called Linenopolis, which I was asked to be a part of, which was just a normal kind of retail environment. So it was just my usual, really amazing spot for the shop in Bedford Street. So a lovely shop front and a lovely location within the city, and that was just fab, really nice, surrounded by lots of other different makers that were involved in that kind of side of things. The exhibition I took part in, I had submitted, it was in Portaferry. I decided to make a piece specifically because, again, it was something I thought, this is an opportunity to push you kind of outside of your comfort zone. I decided to make a map, and I'd done one piece like this before, and again, it was kind of an experimental piece, but I had made it of Dublin, and I don't know why. I just decided, right, I'm going to do something to celebrate the Linen Biennale, the linen industry within Belfast. So I made a map which I titled 1900 and Now. So the base of the map, which was the first map, was like a figure ground plan of 1900, Belfast 1900, the city centre, and it highlighted the linen mills, and they all kind of took, if you ever see a map of that kind of time, they take like a pattern along the river because they use the water for production. So you can see like a sweeping pattern of how they kind of fit within your city. I then did a map of now, which was 2019, on top, which kind of was suspended, which actually showed the roads, and the way that the city is planned out is still kind of loosely, even though the river isn't there anymore, still loosely flows that way from like the Falls Road down into the city, and you can see it when you have them graphically beside each other. But I then embroidered onto invisible thread the waterways and the linen mills, which sat really, really strange. Don't know how I ever discovered how to do it. So it ends up being like a net. I embroidered heavily then like fill where all the little mills would be, and then the waterways, and then it comes out as this really strange piece, and then I set it on top and fixed it at certain points on the map so it sits quite of a relief, and you can see then like movement of the water, and that was kind of to show where our city had come from and that the pattern still kind of flows, albeit slightly differently. And yeah, that displayed amongst the most beautiful pieces in Portaferry, the little exhibition space above their tourist board, which is just so beautiful. And it was a really, really beautiful exhibition and a really amazing piece, but it sold before the exhibition opened, so
Oh, wow.
so I miss it. I have lots of photographs, but yeah, really, really lovely kind of labour of love, and it was really, really nice. And obviously it's lovely when someone invests into something like that as heavily as you have done. But then the last thing that I did for the Biennale was I made a piece that sat within their fashion show. So it's sort of nothing that I've ever really done before. I've always kind of had a bit of an interest in making garments and have kind of dabbled in bits and pieces in the past, but I decided that I wanted to try and do something totally different and totally out there, and again to sort of celebrate this really great thing that was happening for our city and the promotion of kind of our linen industry. So I wanted to make a piece that kind of, from a sort of really conceptual point of view, was like a shelter, a wrap, something that kind of made you feel safe. It kind of homes back to the kind of architecture of place and home and shelter, but also that this functional piece that could be like throw or a shawl, but a scarf that went round you. But I wanted to be zero waste, cut from one piece, so no seams. And I don't know why I went down that route. I thought, let's keep it really, really simple. But actually you have to think really, really complicatedly to get that simplicity. Yeah. And often the most simple things are the things that you've had to really, really kind of almost drive yourself mad over. So I set about it ended up being 3 patterns. One piece came over your shoulders, draped over, sort of almost like a shield or a shawl. It was solid at the back and came over your shoulders and then draped back up on itself to make pockets. I embroidered the pockets, so I still wanted there to be that kind of embroidery element, but I used patterns from my architectural patterns range. I felt that they just kind of sat better with those. The second piece was, again, same idea, but one piece that came over was a huge long piece that then was a scarf, and that kept it on. And then the third piece was the same but slightly shorter piece that you might wear. Yeah, I'm looking at them here when they're hung up. So it was a really lovely thing to do. Again, like a massive, massive amount of time and a massive amount of effort. But it actually felt really good to just do something completely different. And the fashion show was held in Prony, the Public Record Office in Belfast, which is a really beautiful space. And as the fashion show went on, there's a little piece, like a little lovely breakout space to the side where these were on display along with some other pieces, sort of local makers, some other makers from all over the place. There's Maria Cardenas from Venezuela, uses Irish linen to make the most beautiful clothing, really simple, really beautiful clothing. So there's some of her pieces. There was a guy called George Brugner, I think I'm pronouncing his surname properly. He did like an internship with William Clark, and he made some beautiful shirts and jackets, and his stuff was on display. And then Chris Tyndall, who runs Loft, his Belfast jacket was on display. So it was really nice to be kind of surrounded by all these really amazingly talented people. But I felt a little bit like an imposter because it wasn't really what I did, but it was really nice to kind of to push myself that way. So in terms of the Linen Biennale, it was It was lovely to be involved in a massive branch of different things. They ran loads of different talks and workshops and events, and it was great to attend those over the time. And it becomes like a little community. And I think they're having another one next year. They did put the call out for more things when I was on maternity leave, but I didn't submit anything. But I think they may do another call. I think maybe at the time now there might be a slight delay, and so there may be another opportunity. But if not, it might be quite nice to take part as a spectator and rather than from like a different point of view. So yeah, I think there's plenty of people doing really, really positive things for that side of things for Belfast as well, and Northern Ireland, which is great.
So it's really obvious that the ethics and the sustainability factor in your practice is really important to you. And even whenever you look onto your social media, you are very transparent, but also so authentic. And I think that's refreshing to see. You're really easy to engage with. Just you kind of feel like whenever you're following you, it's you, and people are buying into you, but your beautiful products as well. And even recently, you done this wonderful fundraising for the NHS. You developed this project of embroidered rainbows onto your Irish linen. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, how it came about?
That's so kind. Thank you so much to say that, because I almost a lot of the time feel that I overshare. I mean, you probably don't need to say a lot of what my dogs get up to, and my baby, me, as I am now, completely like frazzled and all the rest of it. But yeah, I kind of think that that's important to be, it's important to be like that. And I kind of, I maybe overshare a bit, but yeah, so the rainbows, it came about so randomly. The houses on either side of us have both got young children, and they have rainbows in their front window, and they were beautifully painted. Next door, one way has 3 kids, so it was their 3 different rainbows side by side, and then the other little girl next door had hers up, and I just thought, oh, we don't have like paints and paper, thank God. We're not at that point yet, God forgive me, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but not so much for the blade onto the walls and surfaces of my house. I thought, right, okay, so I think I need to make him a rainbow, for Barney. We have paper. I don't even think I have like colouring pencils, nothing like that. So I thought, right, well, I have some coloured thread, so I will draw a little rainbow and I will make him a rainbow. And I also then thought too, I have some lovely orange, which is really bright, really colourful. I will do it on that. It'll stand out in the window. And I made it and didn't back it. It was just hemmed. I found a stick on our walk one day that I lifted. So I made a little loop top, put a stick and tied some string, like the normal string that I would tie your, it's like grey twine that I would tie like your pin when you buy a cushion onto with, or something like really, really simple, just the stuff lying about. I think I put it on my Instagram stories. People went mad, like absolutely bonkers. And I do have a huge kind of engagement and a relationship with people on Instagram, and it's brilliant. It's really good fun. It's really good crack, and I do get a lot from that, both kind of work-wise and then personally too. Like it's just so much fun. I got absolutely inundated, and it was for a couple of days, and it went beyond the kind of the hard eyes that you would send people, or that looks really nice, and it was like we want these. So then I was like, right, it's not at all architectural, so that goes off my little strict path. But then what we're going through isn't at all normal or on our normal kind of life path. I thought, well, maybe it would be a really nice thing to raise some money for our like local NHS. I hadn't done much research into it. I had to make like a really quick decision because you didn't know how long this was going to last. And I sort of thought, right, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to give money to charity. And I thought from the kind of sheer numbers of response that I got, and then I did a poll when I was kind of thinking. I did one of those little Instagram polls, not that you can really heavily rely on those, but I thought, right, from that I could make money here for people, that they could use it for something. Like these people are doing everything they can for us, so let's do something if I can. Yeah, I just decided then I had to work it out as I went along. So I had this kind of commitment that I made. I photographed the one I made for Barney's room slightly better and put it online, and it was a made to order basis, and I think I put it up first thing in the morning, but like 5 hours or 5.5 hours later I had to stop. I had to put them out of stock because I was never going to be able to do this myself, fulfill this myself in again the time. I didn't know how long this was going to last, and I thought to myself, I need to kind of be realistic here. And it actually just so happened that my husband had been furloughed at the time, so I was able to, we're sharing the childcare at the minute, but I was able to then work full time. He was furloughed for 2 weeks, so I was able to work completely solidly for 2 weeks. And when I mean solid, it's like weekends, our wedding anniversary, everything, you know, but it was just, that's just what kind of I decided, you know, you committed to do.
Yeah.
And I have a girl that works for me and helps me with like some construction and sewing zips and things like that. So I contacted her when the numbers were so high and asked, was there any way I could help? She lives very close. I was able to drop at her door, able to pick up at her door, you know, very safely and things like that. So she had said yes, and she had also said, as you're doing it for nothing, you're putting all your profits, I'm also going to do it for nothing, which is just amazing. And I love her, and she's very talented, also very shy, but very, very talented, and an amazing woman. I decided I would make them out of the remainder of the fabric that I had. Then I found a little bit extra, so I was able to put the last kind of, I think it was 14 in the end, I was able to kind of manage to get out of this random rectangle that I found. So I was able to sell those then again at the kind of last minute, and I think they sold out in something like 15-17 minutes, something random like that. And even now, I don't know how many weeks later, I get messages like every day. What about the rainbows? What about the rainbows? So yeah, and it was great to just be able to raise that. And I know it's not a huge amount, but it was nice, and it went to the Belfast Trust, to their Just Giving page, and I know that that goes to help like staff and helps areas where they don't necessarily get a lot of funding for. So I think it's a really nice thing to do, and I think it's actually, now that you brought that up, actually it's reminded me, I would really like to do something, a thread to my business going forward, possibly charity based, because you don't really think about these things, which is really naive, and you're in a kind of a little life bubble. But I think it's really important to kind of, if you can do it, to try and help in some sort of a way. And I think that people are really, really happy to support that kind of thing. And I learned an awful lot about different local charities when I was researching the NHS ones. So I think in future I have a little bit of an idea going on in the background. I would want it to remain a more architectural thread than a rainbow, even though I love it. And it's out of the window, but it's still up in his room. So I've got some ideas of how to do that going forward, and I think it would be nice to try and raise a little bit of money, and maybe something that was just ongoing as a permanent thing. You maybe donated once a year or twice a year or something like that. So I am still in the process of letting that work itself out in my head. But it was a really, really nice thing, and it was a bit of an eye-opener too, because I think a lot of people were struggling, and some of the messages that I got, you know, this will really, really brighten up, you know, our time, our clap, or, you know, the kids' room, you know, it's lovely. And that kind of thing, you know, it brings it home, because I think there's been massive positives and negatives to this whole time, and some really real brilliant highs and really awful lows, and it's hard to kind of place what happens, or it is quite difficult. So it was a really, really nice little burst of high, and then I just got it done and dusted, apart from the kind of few extra, when my husband then was starting back to his slightly fractured week at the minute because of the childcare. But yes, what I think it happened for a reason, and the fact that he then was furloughed for that short period meant that then I could take up and do that, and it was nice to just be able to do something small. But I can't really take any credit, because you guys all bought them, so everybody bought them, and that's what raised the money. And thank you to everybody, if anybody's going to be listening. Yeah, it was a definite vein off that has made me think about certain things going forward. So
you're so humble. You
Absolutely.
said it wasn't a massive amount. You raised over £2,000. That is incredible. Well done.
Well,
for
the
you.
girl, I'll tell you a really funny story. The girl in the post office. So I have, I'm sure you guys do too, like a drop and go account. So
Yeah.
you just fill your bag and drop it in with them. And so I obviously know the post, and I'll not tell you where my post office is, just in case, and I doubt the girl will be listening. She said to me, I go now, obviously with what's going on at the minute, I only go once a week, but I was there like maybe 2 or 3 times a week, sort of in normal times. So I actually was still going once a week during rainbow time, but I was going with like 2 sacks or 1 big bin bag or something like that. And she says, you know, oh, you're very busy at the minute, aren't you? You know, you're very busy. And I was like, yeah. And then I sort of briefly told her, and she said, so that's brilliant. Well, you'll never be Captain Tom, will you? I was like, oh, no, yeah, I didn't know what to say or kind of how to take it. And then I think he's not captain anymore. He's like, is he major or something? So he got kind of knighted, or excuse my naivety, but he stepped up a grade anyway between two of my trips to the post office. And so the next time I was going with the last drop, and I said, so these are the last of them, these are the last of them. And I'd shown her a little photo behind the screen and stuff, and she says, oh, why did you bother? You know, you'll never make as much money as him. And I just thought, and I was like, well, no, that's not really the point. But yeah, but I can't take credit. It is everybody that has bought them and was kind enough to invest in, because I think they invest in you as a person and your place as well as your product. And then, you know, when you bring out something new and people want it, it's a nice thing as well. So
you have that kind of architectural language, and even you can see it in your embroidery as well. There's those mechanical drawings and the drawings of, you know, that's very familiar in the architecture sense, and how you translate those onto all of your products. Like, you have quite a great product range, you know, it spans from your maps to your cushions, pouches, your sachets, and even to local commissions and things that you would do. How do you feel about those things? Do you prefer working towards your product range, or whenever you're working with a client on a private commission, what would you say is the most exciting aspect of that, of the making process for those?
I love what I do so much. Like, I'm so incredibly lucky to do what I do, and I love my kind of classic range, as I call it. So I think the more that you do, you guys will know, the more that you make what you do every day, so say Belfast skyline or a Georgian door, the better you get at it, the more refined it becomes, the more that you can sort niggles out and things like that. So I really, really enjoy that, because that's something that I see as it's never kind of the same. Yes, it's the same, as I said, like, it hasn't changed, but the way I look at it and the way I approach it can sometimes be different over time. So I do love that aspect in that process. But I think I'm making new pieces, so when I get the time to kind of go in and make a new design that I'm going to launch as like part of the classic collection, I get really excited by that. But I think my absolute favorite thing to do, apart from bring out little new things that I'm talking about, like hopefully launching in the next couple of weeks to celebrate the flax, my absolute favorite thing to do, my bespoke work, I just love to do. I love to work really closely with clients. When they sent me photos of their homes, some of the houses that people live in are just beyond even like imagination. I've just sent one off. I actually checked before I got the call from you guys, and it arrived yesterday. It's amazing, like the most stunning home. And it's weird, it's just so hard to get your head around the fact that this, and they found me at St George's Market a couple of years ago, and it's so hard to believe that like you're just sitting, and you used to be sitting in your dining room table with this little sewing machine that my then boyfriend, now husband, bought me for Christmas, I think it was, that you were just like motoring away on this little brother sewing machine, like whiz, and then you skip I don't know how many millions of years forward, and there's people like this approaching you, and like it's insane. And that's my favorite aspect, because it's really exciting, and there's like so many things. I don't know who these people are or what they do for a living or anything, but I just know they have a beautiful home, and they don't have to be. Some of the places that you're asked to draw are just so incredible, like the most beautiful row of terrace houses, or some really, really beautiful houses across the water in those like really old English towns, like some just so full of character, down to really, really minimal architect designed. And I have had the opportunity again, like I just don't even know how these people have found me, or if they have, why they asked me. But I have done work for people that I've had to sign NDAs, and I'm not allowed to ever tell anybody that I've done work for them, and I'm not allowed to photograph them, and
wow,
not allowed to photograph the finished process. I photograph like my process quite a lot, because I think that helps me make it better going forward. And even though you're never going to create that piece again, you're going to use certain techniques and certain like thread tensions and things like that. So I had to explain that, and that was back and forward. So then you're not allowed to photograph the final piece, but then they invite you to visit it, which is just insane. And so things like that, and people that that you meet, and that has all come back off the back of St George's, going back to how great of like a boost and a sort of a springboard that was. So I think that the bespoke aspect, and I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, and people say, but will it work? Will it work? And in the most normal looking of buildings or houses or doors or churches or anything, right up until the most insane looking things, like crazy buildings, they just work, because I think that you can make, there's a way to draw something for it to be seen. I think when an architect draws or designs, something, you kind of think about how it's going to be made. And I know a lot of people can't really, if you're not in that kind of mindset or training, you don't think that way. But if you draw anything or design anything with it in the back of your head of how it's going to be made or how it's going to be carried out, then I think it inherently is beautiful. It becomes beautiful, and you're designing then like kind of beautiful bones. So when I draw a pattern for a bespoke client, it's all about the bones of it being like something really beautiful that works. And you know, people say, oh, but I don't live in a really pretty house, or I don't, but you chose to be there for a reason, and that's why, and it is beautiful, and it is specific to you, and there's that connection, and that, again, coming back to that sense of place and that sense of home. And that's what I love to do with people. It's really lovely. And even like, people ask churches for wedding presents or anniversary gifts or hotels. I'm drawing a castle at the minute, which is insane. It's lovely.
Wow.
And where else have I done that I'm trying to think of? There's another one that I'm not allowed to talk about. It's so weird, isn't it? So weird.
I'm so curious, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, there's a job that I'm doing at the minute that it was my very first kind of job post maternity leave, and it was just before lockdown, but there was kind of talks of the virus, so like we didn't know whether to shake hands or what to do, and we were in this tiny meeting room, and I was freaking out, and I phoned my husband afterwards, and I was like, oh my god, like there was like 6 of us in this tiny room, and like what if we breathed on each other, and what, like, you know, but it's awful. But yeah, so there was still the talkings of it, but there was no talk of lockdown or anything. I think it was at the time where Italy was kind of just starting to become quite serious, and so I was going to this interview with all these lovely pretty things that I bring that you can touch and you can experience, because that's so important. But I didn't really know what I was doing, and you kind of lose a little bit of confidence. But then that piece is for a charity, and they have got new premises, so they are wanting like a kind of a showcase piece, and they're very, very heavily bedded in the linen industry kind of by default because of where they were based and where they are now going to be based when they move. That meeting went really, really well, and then I found out the next day, I think it was, that I'd got that job. So I'm working on that at the minute too, which is lovely, because I'm drawing between elevations and maps, and then I'm thinking about 3D, as I talked about before as well. So definitely bespoke. I don't know if I ever thought that my business would take that turn, but I think more so at the minute, especially during this year, which has been very, very surreal, but this year has definitely so far been like a very heavily bespoke time. Like a lot of people are just wanting to invest in those pieces, which is lovely, and it's really, really nice. Little bits of free time that I let my kind of mind have, then I can launch these different new bits and pieces and do little limited edition things as well. But I think, sorry, very long-winded answer, but bespoke for me, because you get to work with people, and I do, like I didn't have Skype before today. You know, but that's because I love to meet people. I want to see you to your face, which obviously then is why this is a bit of a struggle. But I work alone, but I love to work alone. I love that the dogs sit in the corner, I'm on my own, I listen to podcasts, like it's great. I really, really love that. But it's really lovely to get out and meet people and see what they want to do and what they think of. And that's why St. George's Market was great, because across that table you can just have these lovely interactions, and that's where these relationships begin. But I think creating a relationship with someone and them getting you enough to want to even start discussions about investing in a piece is just lovely. And I think that that's where I would like things to keep going, but I also don't think that you can in any way force that. You just have to let that happen. So I have plenty of other pieces that I'm working on that will be kind of more of my classic standard architectural Deborah Toner, but I love to see the next commission inquiry come in, because it's so lovely to see what people are thinking, you know, because they see your work and they think, oh, and it kind of puts a little spark, and it's nice to kind of work with people in that respect. So
I find that really stressful, actually. Anything has to be custom or whatever. That really does mess with my head. It's all those questions of what
Yeah.
if, what if.
It
I beat myself up about it.
I think it takes a while because you constantly panic, and even now you're like, what if they don't like it? What if they don't, and there's processes that you go through in order to let them be with you the whole way through. But it is scary. Like, what if a drawing does not definitely translate into an embroidery? So there's like, always that slight panic. And then it is too true, because as well, it's very stressful. Not so much anymore, but what you get asked to do is insane. Some absolutely hilarious requests, like over the years. My goodness me, like I think it starts at about, like, it always used to be animals, which is such a cool thing. Like imagine dog range, amazing.
Oh.
I'm all over the dogs, of course, as you guys know, but it's just not, it doesn't fit with what I do. I have to be very strict with that. But you get a lot of animal-based requests, or I used to anyway, and that used to stress me out a lot, because I didn't know how to then explain that what I did was a certain way and not that way. And some really, really insane, like someone wanted his wife's face on a cushion, and some like random things. And I think I was actually at Castle Ward when I was asked for something really random, and Shannon McShane was beside me, and I think she just watched my kind of how I dealt with the situation, and she just sat and laughed because she was in shock, so much shock. But I was like, what about what I have here with me depicts that's an okay question to ask? But I know, like, it's totally fine, and I think it really helps you. Things like that really help you place yourself, and they really help you somehow find what your USP is, because it's sometimes just really bonkers. But then it makes me check myself before I would ask somebody that I was buying off a ridiculous question, potentially ridiculous question, because you know that you get. But I do welcome it, and sometimes it most of the time it does end up just being like a funny, kind of quite jovial situation. But again, that's St. George's Market was rife for that, and a lot of people who got quite angry that if you didn't want to do what they were asking, and you put yourself in quite a vulnerable position. But it does. I think if you take a positive from it, it helps you figure out what you definitely don't do. So if it stresses you out, it's not what I do, and that takes time. I think it definitely took time for me to be able to confidently say no. no way. Well,
and so you've done bits for exhibitions and things like that. I know you took part in Tactility Factory.
Yes.
Do you ever apply for funding for those exhibition pieces, or how did that come about?
So I worked for Tactility Factory, which was amazing. I loved it because it was like architecture and textiles. So Ruth Morrow was the architect, and she taught me in my first year at Architecture at Ulster, and Trish Belford was the printmaker, textiles extraordinaire, and the joke was that they had a baby and it was me. So, and that is basically what, like, not literally, but basically what happened. So we worked so amazingly together, and it was just the most fun time. And I know that we as Tactility Factory relied heavily on funding, so they got funding in order to be able to employ me, and we created a new range, and Invest and I helped us go on trade missions and to sell the pieces and things like that. That was for me just something that it was just amazing. It was just so good, and it was such a good opportunity. But I ended up making the really difficult decision to leave, because I was still running my business beside it, and it was getting to the point that it just one was clashing with the other, and I kind of had thought I built my business to such a point that I could never let it go, and it killed me. And it still does, but I still keep in touch with Ruth and Trish, and it was hard. It was really, really difficult, and I just had to kind of say, look, you've come this far with your business, you need to concentrate on the one thing. And it was the best decision I could have made, and I did. It was really hard. But in terms of for my business, I have never received funding. I've never applied for funding. I mean, for many reasons. Firstly, I think there is not very much funding available. You guys will also know that. But I think too, it is out there if you want to find it. Sort of a kind of a slight contradiction there. I fall under quite a strange category, I think, like quite a strange blanket. It's not as common as to be, say, for example, getting a kiln or getting like a piece of equipment that is kind of more well known. So I had an amount of money in my head that I knew that I needed for the machine that I wanted, and anything else that was more generalized in terms of funding or opportunity for funding was just a very, very small drop in the ocean for what I needed. I was going down the route of I need to get a bank loan, and it comes from the fact that I've probably always had to be very, very commercial. It also comes off the back of working with Trish Belford is brilliant because she has a very, very, very commercial mind, and as well as extraordinarily creative and talented. So she always kind of embedded it in the back of my mind, or strengthened it. I suppose it was always there, but she kind of came along at a good time to help me strengthen that you know, it needs to sell. You need to sell. So, and it's not for me all about sell, because I don't think that works. It doesn't work when I'm looking to buy something. So I think it's quite a strange one. I just sort of thought to myself, if I spend all of this time trawling the internet to try and find how I could receive funding or where I could get funding, I could be making or promoting or connecting with someone, and I could be selling or, you know, working on a website that would sell, or, you know, so things like that. And I know that it's maybe not a very positive thing, but for me it has worked, and I know that it's worked differently for others. Like I know for you guys it's been great. It is also really tough because you're like one in a massive pond. You're a little person in a massive pond waiting up for, you know, to know whether you can get this money. I just think commercially I've had to just work and make it work. I think also my dad, before he retired, was a bank manager for a very long time, and he said this to me years and years ago, and actually Trish also said the same thing, which it's sort of words to live by. What are you going to do in year 2? You get the money and it's in your pot for now, but what happens next year when you don't get the pot of money? And if you don't kind of make that work for you successfully, which not very many people are able to do, and I think there's a problem with funding when it comes to that, to the small amount I know and the small amount of experience that I have, that if you're not properly guided, and it's hard, it's difficult for these people giving this to be able to know exactly what your niche is and exactly where you are and where you're coming from and where you want to be, because sometimes you don't always know the answers to those questions. So when you get this pot of money, if you don't spend it wisely or the right way, if there is a right way at that time for you, you're not going to have the money in year 2, and you're not going to necessarily be given it again. So what do you do in year 2 is kind of a bank manager's response, and I kind of think that's always in my head. So instead of waiting to find out, I just worked and worked and worked and worked, and it's paid off, which is great. I'm paying my loan off, and that's great, but it's not always that easy either, because you have to prove. It's very difficult for businesses. It's very difficult for like artistic, creative businesses, because they just look at you and think they'll give any amount of money in the world to somebody with a real job, as I call it. Yeah. But it's very hard to show where you'll be in a number of years' time, unless you can go walk in and say, I'm a doctor, I'm an architect, But yeah, so it's difficult, but I just think that was always instilled in me, and that means that I kind of did it that way. But it is out there, and it is worth kind of trying to get if that's what you need. And it is hard as well too to be commercial, because I think that you've got to be commercial with the products that you sell and put forward to sell, but you've also got to be commercial with where you choose to be and choose to place your products. And I think that my commerciality was helped lots with St. George's Market, because I was able to sell small bread and butter pieces, as we would call it. But then it's about the marketing and getting yourself out there and getting that pool of people who are willing to then maybe spend a little bit more money, and that's how it goes. So it's hard to place yourself commercially as well as have the time to constantly think commercially. But I think coming from an architecture background, where I did do a degree that I was going to have a real job out of, made me think that I had to prove myself, and I had to work and work and work to prove that the job that I had was just as good, if not better, than the job that I would have got with my degree. I tried to get a job as an architect, and I did work as an architect for a time, part 1. But yeah, I think a lot of that drive and determination came from the fact that I felt that I needed to prove to probably more myself now looking back on it, but to my family, to my friends, to my partner, my husband, you know, I am just as good, even though I am not using this degree. And that's kind of sad when you look back on it, because you are conditioned to think that you need to work in what you studied to be. But in actual fact, I still wouldn't change. If I knew that I wasn't going to work as an architect, I wouldn't change the journey that I've taken, because I think it makes you who you are. So yeah, I think funding, there's not very much of it, but it is out there. I just think that I kind of always had that in the back of my mind, like, what do you do in year 2? And I think that scared me off, because I thought, oh God, in year 2, it'll all be gone. What do I do? You know, and that's, you know, I think maybe that's like the sensible bank manager's daughter in me. He'd love me to be more sensible, but it's not. Yeah.
So could you describe your studio? Because from pictures on Instagram, it looks incredible, and it's such a unique setup to have. Could you talk us through that a wee bit?
It's a mess for a start. So it is a little kind of shedio, kind of timber.
Shedio, I love that.
Shedio.
Yeah.
So it's, and it's kind of like, I kind of describe it as like my mind exploded onto the walls, because as I showed you guys earlier, well, as you can see over my shoulders, but I just have everything like wee bits pinned to the wall, you know, like a few phone numbers, a few like dimensions of things that I make all of the time, or sequences, or, you know, oh, those have to be that width, and pinned here, and samples. And it's mainly, I've got one little tiny long strip window, which I have like flags of linen across to keep the sun out, which, I mean, I could, if only I knew someone that could make me a blind. I need to make a blind. Yes, I kind of have zoned it off into areas. So I've got like an area where I made an ironing board on wheels, so it's like 2 IKEA shelves on casters with a big board on the top, and so the storage, and it's at a nice height, you know, for you to be able to work it slightly higher. And then I have my large industrial machine. I have some hanging space, and then I have a larger table on wheels behind me here, which is the same thing, only it's just a little bit more raised up, which I do stretching on. So I, you know, you soak the carpet tiles, there's carpet tiles on the top, and you do stretching, which is what you have to do with all the pieces to make them really like kind of paper flat. And then I have loads of storage, which to me, through my eye, looks really good, and then when I see it on the screen, it is not good. But yeah, it's just an awful lot of the stuff that I've got going on, but I really love it. I really feel like it's kind of my little space, and it's in the middle of my garden, which is lovely too, because usually in the summer, which like not like today, you know, the door's open, you can hear the birds, you've probably still been able to hear the seagulls, which is but like you're looking out at the sky through the little window, and it's really lovely light, and it's just great. And it's kind of, I've only ever worked from like our dining room table or our front bedroom in our last house, and it's lovely to have that little space that you kind of close at the end of the day, and that's it, it's gone, and you know, it's lovely. So yeah, it's a tip. And I always thought when I was off on maternity, I would like do a big gut, get it all, everything pulled out, do a big hoover and a clean, and get everything back in. But then I kind of forgot that on maternity you had a baby. So how on earth would you do that now? Like, what? So I need to do, when we are allowed to have grannies back, I need like an afternoon just to make it a little bit more presentable, because I did have a film crew come here a number of years ago when we just were doing work to the house. So I was in here and we weren't living in the house, and they were filming for a film called like From Field to Flax, and it was to do with like this flax journey that I've talked to you guys about. And they came in and they trudged through like the building site, and the back wall of our house fell down like 2 minutes before they arrived. And the builder was like, do you want me to rebuild it, or do you want me to like check, you know, what should we do? And I was like, rebuild it. Like, what? We don't have an option. Rebuild it. So I'm sitting being interviewed for this film going, my house is falling down, my house is falling down. But in that time, it was really neat and tidy and lovely, and I had a display space up, but it's not good. It's not good now. You've seen, I did a quick whiz round, and there's loads of storage too. Like I need to kind of get things sorted from that point of view, but it'll look a little smarter. And when I tidy it, you'll know, because I'll probably put a photo up, because I'll be like, hey, look. But yeah, I do love it, and it's a really nice space to be creative in. which is quite nice. I'm not really mad. I'm a bit afraid of colour, but like it's colourful. It's kind of what's inside your mind that you're not totally brave enough to always bring to fruition. But yeah, lots of little experimenty things.
How are you finding being a new mum and a maker and a business owner and doing it all at the same time? And how was maternity leave as well? Like, that's being self-employed is such a
Oh my God, it's
difficult
bonkers.
journey. Yeah.
It is insane. So maternity leave was staggered for me. So being a new mum is insane. Like, I never thought I would be a mum ever, apart from 2 Franken beans, of course. But yeah, it's really surreal because I think you totally change as a person, and I know that's so cliched, and I would have rolled my eyes at anyone that I'd heard say that before, and I never ever had any place in my mind at all for how women do this. Like, oh my God, I have no idea at all. So I kind of thought, oh, it'll be grand, everything's grand, it'll be totally, I went through the phase at the start of, oh my God, what am I going to do? This is a disaster. Like, I'll never be able to make it work. To then that whole, like, oh my God, I'm brilliant. I'll be able to do it. Powerful. Yay. Strong woman. It's really difficult. It's amazing. I think your whole kind of like attitude changes because you just know that your concentration is this person, this little mini person. I remember telling one of my friends that I was pregnant, and first of all, she was like, are you okay? Like, oh, you. And then she said, look, I found it really difficult over my career, and she said, like, you can't have it all. Like, you can't have it all. And you kind of were like, no, that's such a negative attitude, don't be so silly. But it's not about having it all. It's not about having it all. For me, my all is my family, and I have it all because I have my husband and my son and my dogs, and we have just a beautiful, like, really lovely life, and we're incredibly lucky for that. But for me, my business is my something. My family is my all, and you can have it all, and it is hard work, but my something is my business, and that makes me who I am, and I can never give it up, and we'd never give it up. I also spoke to a colleague of my husband's just after I had Barney, and she said to me, she's an architect, and when she had her first son, she took a career break for 5 years, and she said to me, I'm going to take this, I wanted to take this time, and I thought I'm going to live for like 85-ish years. What's 5 years of my life to just invest in this most amazing thing that I have done? And I was like, she is mental. 5 years? What? Oh my God. And I'm sitting nursing this tiny baby, and I was just like, she is insane. Like, absolutely not. But the more the time goes on, I think, of course, you would do anything to invest in this amazing life. Like, and it's your job. It's your job, and I very much feel that it is my job. I'm not going to give up work by any stretch. It's because it is very much a part of me. It makes me who I am. But I also think that being a mum is now part of who I am. One influences the other. I now find being at work is much easier than being a mum. It's respite, it's headspace. You don't always get to kind of have your mind kind of floating away thinking about like what you're going to make or what you're going to do, because you're constantly concentrating on where he's got his fingers or what he's doing or what he's got in his mouth, or but that's normal. Whereas down here in my studio, it's kind of that lovely respite and that lovely kind of free space in your head, which is nice. But I certainly won't work to the capacity I did until he goes to school or nursery or whatever happens, because I still have no idea. I'm just kind of winging it. So yeah, he starts back to daycare in August, but it will only be 2 to 3 days a week, and I will do that, and I will make it work until he goes to full-time nursery or school. And I think, of course, it's extraordinarily expensive to send your child to daycare, but aside from that, I didn't have him to send him off, and it's a very short time, and people always say, this time, you never get the time back, it flies, and again, you roll your eyes, but you don't. Already, he's like climbing on the coffee table, on the window ledge, launching off the sofa, like he can't even walk yet. Oh my God, like pulling the dogs by the tails, like all of that there. And you're like we looked at each other the other night and we're like, where is our baby? Like, but I think it makes me work more efficiently, because there's probably a lot of the time where I would have sat here and just daydreamed and looked at all my bits on the wall and thought about new things. I think it makes me think efficiently. I think maybe subconsciously things sort themselves out in my head too. I worry about a lot less, and I kind of know that I need to make it work. but also that if something doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. You don't beat yourself up, you move on. And, you know, that comes with experience too. It's very hard to not get completely bogged down by certain things, and it's really all encompassing. But I certainly think that through experience, I've just sort of learned that my priority is that I am a really good mum and I am the best mum that I can be. But in order to do that, I still have to have my business and I still have to be Deborah. And I met someone who introduced me as the child's name's Daddy. I'm such and such as Daddy. And I was like, I'm Deborah, even though Barney was there. But I was a bit like, this is really strange. So I think I had a massive like identity crisis, I think, when I first had him, because I thought, like, I don't want to be mummy. I want to be mummy, but I don't want to be known as mummy. And you know, I very much wanted to get back to being Deborah as well as being mummy. And it's sort of a strange kind of a split personality thing. But I took August, September, October off, and I was just mummy, and he was just the most amazing little baby, and still is, even though he's mental. He's absolutely insane, but like, I mean, do you blame him? God,
He's so cute.
he's mental. But I think I worked November and December very, very loosely, like opened the website for classic design pieces, and I had a couple of small things that I'd taken on, like waiting list type things that I'd taken on that people wanted for Christmas. In hindsight, that was probably not the best thing to do, but it was fine, and I was able to do like wee bits and pieces in the evening and things once I started to feel kind of back into it. And then I took January and February off again, just because he was so much fun and I was really enjoying him. And I kind of always thought, I'll never be that mother, I'll never want time off, I'll never go to those baby groups, but you change completely, and it's not about you. It really isn't. But I do really love that I can still make this work, you know, and I will continue to. Yeah, it kind of just becomes an extra part of your life, an extra dynamic to your life. And I mean, he is determined to put me in an early grave, because he's always up to some rubbish. Like, I mean, always looking for bold things to do. Like, he is so funny. But then my mum's like, well, Deborah, look at you. Like, you know... And it's true, like, you're just always looking for some shit to be up to. Sorry, am I allowed to swear? You know, and that is like the, you know, and it's true, like, just bold things. And then, like, I mean, Frank's the same. I mean, we'd Frank from a puppy, and he is so badly behaved, so I can't get this one wrong. Like, we have to, I mean, is there puppy school for babies? Some sort of training in order to have him not be absolutely insane. But like, he's a free spirit. I think I like to call it that at the minute, which is how I'm kind of garnering my lack of control. But yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult. But I mean, I wouldn't change it. It's life, and it's the path that you've been given, and it's certainly not like a bad thing. And I just look at him and I'm like, oh my God, you are mine. Like, how did this even happen? Like, he just looks like baby photos of me, and it's really, really, really scary. And he's starting to look a little bit like his daddy now, and we just find that we stare at him, and then the two of us are like, what is that? Like, where did we get him? You know? But yeah, I love being up here, and I love being Deborah, and I love... Can you hear Frank bark? He's barking at the seagulls in the rain. Yeah, I just love being me as well, but I love that I have been lucky enough to have that extra kind of dynamic to my life, and I am very, very lucky that I have him, and we are very lucky. So yeah, that not having it all scared me, because I thought, I don't want it all, but I want to be able to have that option of, you know, wanting to have what I want to have, and not everybody's lucky enough to do that. But it's not you slowly kind of figure out that it's not about having all. It's, you've already got all. You've already got your all. I'm just really incredibly lucky to have something as well that has seen me like so well. And yeah, it's great to have a job that you kind of bounce out of bed in the morning and you're like, here you go, take him. I'm going to work. You know? So yeah, it's good.
So you say that you obviously use your practice as a wee bit of an escapism. What would you do to unwind then? What's your go-to thing to do?
Probably at the minute, work. And my friend actually said to me when I was trying to do bits for Christmas last year, you know, Deborah, this, you know, she's a doctor and she's a mummy as well. She was like, Deborah, new mum, like, you've got to look after yourself, and you've got to, you know, I'm really worried about you, you know. And I totally, that was her, like, very caring best friend mode, but also doctor mode. But I actually didn't understand, because she doesn't see her work as like an escapism, because, well, it can't be. So I very much was like, oh my god, but my work sitting up here and like sewing away with like music on or podcasts on, like, so work is a massive escape for me, because it helps you realize that you are still you as well. I listen to podcasts, but they're like, it's going to sound so grim, it's going to make me out to be so mad, but I listen to like crime, like true crime stuff. Or God, I'm trying to think of certain ones. There's some really amazing ones, but some of them are really, really gruesome, and some I can't listen to, like some that are about like children, and so I just can't listen to, and they always do like a little warning at the start, so that's good. But my husband's like, what is wrong with you, like serial killer? But I just love it. I think it's a massive like escapism. You're not really totally there, but it's just like a noise in the background. I actually find music, I used to listen to the radio, but I think that's like a sign of age, that like the music was just killing me, like, and that, which reminds me of like what my dad would have said when we were younger. But I just stick whatever radio is just like on, and then I find it quite difficult to, music is brilliant because you don't actually know the time. It's like great, whereas a podcast, you know, lasts like an hour, or, you know, so then you kind of know you've got like more of a grasp on time, and I find I get a lot more done when I listen to music. So I would just stick like anything on, like Prince album, I think it was like Tina Turner, you know, so you kind of find yourself dancing, and then you realize that your door's glass and that your neighbour's like off, and you're like, oh no. So it's not, or I'm talking to Instagram stories and the neighbour's like, what is she doing, which is just bonkers. But I think my escapism, like podcasts and things like that, there when I'm up here, and then down in the house, like when we get Barney to bed, we cook together, and especially through lockdown, like we've made more of a conscious effort to like stand and cook together. And that was one of the reasons why we designed our kitchen the way we did, because we used to live in a house with like a galley kitchen, and I think I talked to you about this, Robin, before, maybe, that like you're kind of squeezing past each other, and you know, if one of you's got a glass of wine, there's nowhere to sit, and you're kind of a bit awkward. So we very much wanted to make this like the space, so you sit on a stool, the other person cooks, or somebody cuts something, and it's a real like, we love that, and it's so nice. And we did before, and we will again for friends, and it's lovely just to be able to do that, and like you switch off, and then we would watch, if we're still awake by that stage, you know, sit and watch certain things. But like we always get into those like series on Netflix, like we get really hooked to that kind of thing, because normal telly, you never kind of get hooked into anything, so we always watch those kind of, but again, they're always like kind of murdery, crimey type things, and my husband's like, what is wrong with you? But no, it's good. It's nice to kind of have that, like, it's very mundane and but it's really kind of healthy to just be able to switch off that way. But I'm not the most amazing cook. I'm like a bit of a fire starter. Like, I just don't know how I do it. I don't know. I try really hard, but it's not very successful. And we have this thing, our smoke alarm sends a text to your phone to tell you that there's smoke, but I mean, that's not helpful because you're in smoke, but it sends it to his phone too. So like, I'm cooking and he's at work, and he's like ringing me, have you started another fire? I'm like, it's just a small bit of smoke, like, it's fine. It's fine. So last week he came home and he's like, yeah, see, there was smoke in the kitchen, and I was like, yes, I burnt toast, like, it's fine. And he was like, how have you burnt toast? But yeah, so cooking is good. We get like HelloFresh, so it's like instructions, which I need. We get that a couple of nights a week, which is lovely. And then obviously with baby eating proper food and stuff, it's kind of forced me into looking up proper recipes and making things. So I do really enjoy it, which hopefully will mean the fires are slightly minimized now with practice. Yeah, I think unwinding time is definitely important, especially when you work for yourself, because you're not kind to yourself, and you're out doing things at all hours, and you really need to wind down. I mean, even if you don't, like, walk the dogs, or I don't know, glass of wine, or read a book, or, you know, it's all really, really important to just kind of to chill, you know. So otherwise you just go mad, and I have been guilty of not doing that in the past, and then you just turn around and you're like, hang on a wee second, I don't want to wake up when I'm like 45 and wonder how we ever like spent any kind of time, you know. So but we've a week booked off soon, in like a couple of weeks time. Obviously we can't go anywhere, but we're just the two of us, just need to really like just spend time with Barney, and hopefully we've got time, like some time in the garden, and like, just normal, mundane, like letting go of one thing in your head.
And final question, what was the last piece of locally made craft you bought?
That's a really good question. Okay, so it's so long ago because of lockdown. I think it was from Gemma.
Was it?
I think it was at Christmas because we haven't been out and I haven't really done much online shopping. Well, I did buy something actually last week, but it wasn't from a local. It was from a girls' graduate show from across the water. Yeah, I think it was at Christmas at was it Fine and Dandy Titanic?
Maybe we can't allow this to promote my work. Oh no, that's not right.
And it was the little, like one of those little lovely plates, and it was for a friend for Christmas, friends, and they loved it. Absolutely loved it.
You
And
can say
were,
like if they really hated it, like
I
you
don't
can say that too. That's fine.
their house was on RT's House of the Year. Like they're really hard to buy
Getting that on
for.
my CV.
You
Yeah.
need they have like the most incredible house. He's an interior designer, like incredible. It's really hard to buy them stuff. Like we always get them silly things, but then we thought this year we're going to get them like proper gifts. We got them loads of different bits and pieces, and we got them from the guy there too. He grew like grow your own mushroom things from the farmer.
Yeah.
And they grew them, and they were going to make us like a mushroom pasta thing, but then they went on holiday just before lockdown and the mushrooms died or something happened and they looked a bit too weird. So he was like, no, I had to throw it out, so I need to get him another one of them. No, I think he put it in like they have like a composty type, so he put it in there like back to the, because he said they looked, I mean a mushroom doesn't look great, but yeah, so we bought one of those too. So we got like lovely gifts this year rather than silly stuff, and they loved it. And I think the next time we were around at their house, which was probably New Year, they had like things out on, he does the most amazing food and all too, like he's doing us Sunday roast next week, but like delivering to our door, because that's like I am. That's like, so he had stuff just like on your plate, and I was like, oh my god, it looks so good. I should have taken a photo of it, because like, I mean, it's like something you'd see in a magazine. But yeah, so probably yours, but I do try really hard to get gifts for family and like occasions and stuff, but I always go to Spacecraft, Craft NI to get those sorts of things. I always buy wee things, but I've been really actually quite good over lockdown, because Barney has grown and I've just been buying him clothes and things like that to keep up with that kind of thing, and there's never really anything that you kind of want to get, because I don't like looking at shopping stuff on, like, because it's just sell, so I don't follow that kind of like fashion-y type. I don't like any of that, because it's just rammed down your throat. So I do love going to all of those little fairs, and which has obviously not been happening recently. So I think really, really, really sadly it was Christmas, but hopefully not for too much longer. And because obviously I missed Mother's Day, I was sent flowers, but like Mother's Day is when you always get wee things like that, and Father's Day too. But yeah, so we need to get back, and obviously Spacecraft's back open again, so yeah, we can start to buy some nice local things again. And I know I know everyone has a website, but I still love the idea of, and I rely heavily on people shopping on my website, but I love the idea of saying, let's go into town, I need to get, or let's go to Hillsborough, or let's go somewhere where they've got those lovely small independent stores that you can buy some really beautiful, thoughtful gifts. Like I love that, and I think that's what I've struggled with during this time, where you're thinking, oh my god, it's Mother's Day, I have to go on and buy something and like send it to them via here, and I do rely heavily on people doing that for my product, but I do love the experience of talking to the person that made the product or is selling the product for the maker. And so let's get back to that soon, and I will have a more recent purchase. But yes, I will be back for more, obviously. And I want to get my nose pierced, but my husband said I'm too old, because then I would be obviously shopping with Robin. But yeah, Listen, I'm too scared of needles. Like, I can't even get my blood taken. I'm not sure that would, but yeah, so
well, it's been absolutely amazing to speak with you today. You are brilliant. Absolutely great. You really are.
Thank you.
But if anybody wanted to get in touch with you or follow your making journey, how would they do that, or where can they go to get more information about you?
Oh, my website, which is deborahtoner.co.uk, or my Instagram, which is Deborah_Toner, I think. Just type in Deborah Toner, I think you'll get it. I used to be on Facebook as much as I was on Instagram, but for some reason they've stopped me posting and won't let me in, and so I there's no point in telling you about that. I don't know what is wrong. I need to look into it. I need to take like a half a day. I am, as you guys know, quite computer illiterate, so it needs to be, I need to kind of do some research into that and find out what I've done wrong, or maybe it's such an old account as well. It's like, I think I maybe need to start from scratch. But website or Instagram is kind of mainly where I would be. There's information on the website and things like that too. But yeah, just send me an email or message. And as I said, like, I think I am pretty transparent. I write back to every message, however bonkers it is. I do make the point of like writing back, because I think if you've taken the time to message, it's like only right that you kind of get back. So yeah.
It was so lovely to talk to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. And thank you for having, like, I've got a bit of headspace on a Sunday, so it's great. So nice. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
I'm just going to press stop on record. I'm not just going to hang up.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for a fantastic glimpse into your practice. Thank you also to the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, who have kindly supported our second series with their Artist Emergency Programme.
For our next episode, we are making conversations with goldsmith Tanya Ireland, whose episode we can't wait to share on the 30th of July 2020.